Hi, this is Karen Allen from Animal House and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you're listening to the Claws Corner.
Welcome to the latest episode of the Claws Corner. Today's guest is an actor, director, playwright, acting teacher, and musician. His television work includes One Life to Live, Oz, Law and Order Criminal Intent, NYPD Blue, Kojak, Equalizer, All My Children, and many more. His stage work includes Richard III, Search and Destroy, Awake and Sing, American Buffalo, and yes again, many, many more. His movies include Injustice for All, Light of Day, 645, Gangland, Money Train, McBain, Clan of the Cape Bear, and, you guessed it, many, many, many more. In 2000, after establishing himself as a top acting teacher, Mike Guest opened the TWG Acting Studio. Its credo is, a good actor doesn't get great roles, a good actor makes them great. He is also an extremely talented musician. He's performed all over New York City in clubs such as CBGB's, Limelight, and The Bitter End, even opening up for the Smithereens. He has the distinct honor of starring not in one, but two cult classics, playing Fox in Walter Hill's The Warriors and John Carpenter's The Thing portraying Windows. So without further ado, please welcome the extremely talented, as you can see, the extremely versatile, Thomas G. Waits to the Claws Corner. Thomas, how are you?
Thank you. Thank you, Rich. That was a beautiful introduction. I hope I can live up to it.
I think you could. You have done a lot. And I want to start off with what you're currently doing, because you wrote, directed a movie entitled Target. It was just released recently, so let's start with that.
Great. Yeah, it was released on Prime, Amazon Prime, or Prime Amazon. What is the correct?
Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime. Thank you. Amazon Prime, Google, and Apple on April 18th. And it's called Target. It's a playful sex comedy. And I really pushed the envelope on this one. And thank you for mentioning all the some of the stuff that I've done, and I know there's so much that I forget. 5 decades in the movie business, and plays and theater and films and television. I mean, I've been very lucky, and I've had a great life, and I attribute it all, quite frankly, to the training that I received as a young actor at the Juilliard School. Mm-hmm. I was 17 and I got a scholarship, and I was in class with Kelsey Grammer and Robin Williams and Mandy Patinkin and Bill Hurt and a few other people that have gone on to great notoriety and very talented. So one can't help but by osmosis learn from the greats by being around them. And then also we had just terrific teachers. And so at a very young age, at 17, 18, I was inculcated with this sense of discipline about the work, about the honor and the nobility of creating something out of nothing. You get a play or a movie script, it's just words on a page. It doesn't mean anything. But when you connect your imagination with your craft, you then create a character, and hopefully, as in some of the films you've mentioned, like Injustice for All, which I was a baby, I was 23 when I did that. Getting to work with Al Pacino, great actors, it rubs off on you. One picks up a sense of, okay, I see they're successful. Kurt Russell, for example, from The Thing. I see these people that are immensely talented and successful as well. What's their secret? How do they do it? And I'm a good character study, and I'm also extremely, obviously, driven and ambitious. So during the pandemic, I said, well, what do you really want to do? And I said, I want to make a movie. So 27 drafts later, I sent it to a script doctor, spent a fortune, rewrote the entire thing, and started doing readings on Zoom. Then somehow, don't ask me how, because I have no concept of how I accomplished this, but I raised the money. And I shot it in 15 days, and it the production value is, you know, I think very high quality, and the acting is great. And, you know, it's up to the audience now to decide whether or not it's intended to be a playful sex comedy, as it says, you know, and I really hope people get a laugh. I mean, if you get past the first 10 minutes, because it really comes at you. You know, I don't fool around. I come out and I sucker punch the audience right off the bat. There's no easing into anything with me. And then this world unfolds before you, the world of Target, you know, which involves a married couple and their, well, his desire specifically to open up the marriage to spice it up, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. You know, I saw, I think you have a trailer online and it looks hilarious. I can't wait to see. I'm going to be probably watching it right after this interview is over. And people need to laugh right now. And I think people, I love the fact that you just go full force. You said sucker punch, you know, people, because I hate political correctness. I love the fact people are, I think, are afraid to laugh. Oh my God, is that going to be offensive? Can I laugh at that? Just, if it's funny, it's funny. You can make fun of anything if you do it in the right way. And that's why I love the fact that this film sounds like everything that I would like in a film. You described it. I was doing my research on you, and I loved how you described it. You said it's the Big Lebowski meets Meet the Fockers.
Yeah, it definitely has the world. You know how the Big Lebowski, the Coen brothers created this world, and you just bought into it. It was this crazy, kooky world, and if you accept the conceit of the world that the writer is trying to create to invite you in, then it becomes an extremely satisfying experience, because you can, hopefully one can see oneself in some of the characters, I hope.
Did you have any showings in the theater?
Yeah, we've had 3 screenings. The first one, you know, was right after I did the final cut. I sent a copy to John Carpenter.
All right.
Because John had kind of mentored me along the way. It's very hard making movies. Anybody out there that's ever tried knows. Anybody ever out there that wants to, you need to know that it is sort of like going to war, which is probably why Oliver Stone was a good filmmaker. You are battling against light, because in film everything is light, and you're battling against, you know, budget restrictions. You're battling against equipment failures, and all these things would happen to me. And I'd call John and I'd go, John, you know, I'm ready to jump off the roof. What am I going to do? You know, we have no lights, and they won't replace. You know, take a walk, Tommy. Take it easy. Just take a walk and just relax your mind and try not to think about it for a second. Just think about something else. And how's the weather out there? You know, he got sort of talked me off the ledge, and then when it came to cutting it, you know, I had some questions with regard to composition, with regard to precisely. I'm a very precise director, in the sense that, you know, I want that, you know, bottle of water to be lifted up on that line and put down exactly on that line, and no place else. Let's do it again, please. And you know, that's because I see how I want it to be, you know. And I much prefer that in the world when I'm working with a director that knows what he wants, as opposed to like, well, you know, just do whatever you want. I mean, it can't be anarchy. It requires craft and skill to tell the story. And, you know, there's the actor's job, the director's job, the crew. You know, I had an amazing crew, and these people worked for, I mean, I had 3 producers, and all of whom worked full time on the movie the whole 3 weeks, and all had regular full-time jobs that did everything for a point on the back end.
Wow.
And I never got paid. The actors got paid, of course, and you know, I was happy to do that. But it's very, it was right after COVID, so I had to pay people to spray aerosol with whatever the good that's going to do. I have no idea against COVID, but
Yeah.
SAG said you have to pay them $150 a day. These two kids, they get up and spray and wipe everything down and sit down and watch. They were nice kids, but it got very expensive, and because of the sexual uh, tone of the film, there's no nudity. In point of fact, one of the distributors that turned me down said, "Now, if you had nudity, I'd buy it in a second." And I said, "Well, that isn't the film that I was trying to make. I'm trying to insinuate the power of sex on the mind,
Yeah.
and the influence it has in a sort of Freudian way, really. That we are really driven by our sexual need to gain approval from, I'm speaking generally, the opposite sex, or if one is gay, from the same sex. But there's always lurking in the subconscious mind, does she like me? Does she find me attractive? Does he like me? Does he like my hair or the way? And this is a very powerful theme to work with regard to telling stories. And I thought I would just go right after it. I've never seen a movie about a guy that wanted his wife to have sex with other men in front of him. I mean, maybe they do it in porn. I really don't know. I don't watch porn, but
Yeah.
I'm told that they do. But it's, I just went to the most, I figured I'm going to make a movie and I'm going to make it stand out. With this low a budget, I've got to do something, be provocative or be forgotten is my motto.
Yeah.
So I figured I'd come out swinging, and that's what I did.
Yeah, no, I love that because it's a passion project for you. So where did the inspiration come for this movie?
It started listening, during the pandemic, there wasn't much to do, as you know. In New York, we were locked in our apartments. We could only go to the grocery store and drugstore. That was it. I heard a story on NPR about orphans, children that are adopted, only for the financial return that the parents get. They take a kid in, they give them a place to live, but they really don't care about the kid. They just want the money from the government. And then they get rid of him after a couple of years and he goes to another house. And I started thinking to myself, that would, and in point of fact, everyone agrees that like 90% of orphan children end up in prison because they don't know anything else except what they've learned, which is to steal and lie and cheat and get over it. That lack of love has a deleterious effect on one's development as a human being. And so I started with that character, the young man, troubled motorcycle stealing James Dean of the 21st century is what I was going for. I started with him, and then I thought, what's going on in my life, and how can I use what's going on with me in my personal life and tell the truth in this story? And the truth of the matter is that I do exploit some of myself, but some of it is fictional memoir, so to speak. But it was really great fun making it, and I can't wait to make the next one.
Oh, there's going to be a sequel?
It's interesting you said that. I have an idea called Target Practice, where the woman played by a terrific actress in my film named Jam Murphy. She's just a beautiful woman and a great, brilliant actress, a great comedic actress as well, great physical comedy. And I have this idea that she moves to New York after this experience and starts her own life and starts making decisions about what her sexual preferences and agenda might be on her own, as opposed to uh, under the guise of being married to a wealthy older man.
I love it. You can turn this into a whole series. I can't wait.
Yeah, yeah, she can just keep going.
Well, I like the fact that you had some great advice from John Carpenter, because I love John Carpenter's style. With him, it's always less is more. I love the original Halloween way more than I like Rob Zombie's, because I think he far too much explained how he became the boogeyman. I don't really care how he became the boogeyman. He's the boogeyman. He kills people, and it's just like all of John Carpenter's movies are like that. But another reason I like that fact that you consulted him is because, like you, he likes to do the music for his movies. And I was watching an interview with you so I can do my research, and I saw you perform the song "Ride" that is in the movie.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, right. Right. All right. Right. That's one of my songs. Yeah. Oh, is that on? Is that out there on YouTube somewhere?
Yeah, it's out there on YouTube. When I was doing my research, I had so much fun doing my research on you, because, like I said in the intro, that was just a portion of what you've done. You've done so much, but yeah, when I was getting ready for Target, there was you played the song, so I know that "Ride," and so I have to say it's a great song. I loved it.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you.
do you have any other songs that you have in the movie?
Yeah, I wrote all of the. I think there are 8 songs, and I wrote 7 of them,
Wow.
and one of them was written by a friend of mine, and I play on it. I play the guitar, maybe the keyboard on that one. I
Hmm.
can't remember, but yeah, I had a big hand in the music. Like John, uh, he did it as well, as the same reason I did it is financially. There's just $150,000 is a very tiny micro
Yeah.
budget. So when it came to post production, I'm a musician and I'm really, you know, attuned to sound. And
Yeah.
I needed the sound track to be as visceral and as important as the film itself. And I believe that it is. And I think today or tomorrow we're releasing the album,
Uh,
on which are many other songs that I've written that didn't make it into the film, but that are quite good, that people seem to like a lot. When we play them in concert, they're like, "Hey, wow, where can I get that?" So soon you'll be able to go on all the major platforms and get Thomas G. Waite's music for Target.
right. So it'll be
And
the Target soundtrack, and right now it's April 21st. So when this interview is released, we'll be able to go on to all the platforms and check out your music. Definitely looking forward to that.
thank you.
So I want to go back to Thomas G. Waite's early years.
Okay, yeah.
Tell me how a car accident, a trip to the hospital, and some Demerol led to acting.
So you've definitely done your research. So I grew up in a kind of a rough neighborhood outside of Philadelphia, a place called Bristol, Levittown. It was very bad. The race riots. I saw them looking out my window as a 5-year-old child, and there were gangs, and I was involved in a gang. Way before the Warriors, I was in a real gang, and I was headed for trouble. I was not doing well in school. I was in Catholic school. I was driving my parents completely crazy, and the cops had been to the house 3 times, and they said the next time bring your toothbrush because you're coming with us. And the universe did me a great favor by having me get hit by a car, and really seriously, my femur snapped in half, my left femur. My kidney was ruptured. My ribs were broken. I had a concussion and traumatic brain injury. I was really banged up. And as painful and as horrible as that was, and I was just a kid. I had to stay at age 15 or something for almost a year in the hospital. Like a year in the hospital as a teenager. I mean, that was really watching the seasons go by, and That's how badly damaged badly hurt I was from the car accident. But what happened is, back in those days, you used to be able to smoke in hospital rooms. So, you know, I was pretty, badly banged up. And so to go to sleep, they would shoot me up with Demerol. And man, I love that stuff. So I would light up a cigarette and I'd look out the window and I'd be like, maybe this, metal pike through my leg isn't so bad after all. Maybe this is a good break from life. So I'm like getting wasted every night, passing out, putting the cigarette out. Luckily, I didn't burn the hospital down. And about 10 days later, the orthopedic surgeon comes in and he's looking at the chart and he's like, wait a minute, he should not be getting this much Demerol. He's been here for 2 weeks. And she's like, but he's in pain. And then they both sort of looked at me. And then I looked like, the canary in the coal mine or whatever. And they realized that what I did was I pull the emergency cord and I'd pretend like I was in. Give him a shot, calm him down. And then, so the nurse, Miss Richardson, she was my neighbor, lived in the back. She looked at me and she went, "You ought to be an actor." And a light bulb went off over my head because I knew that my career as a sort of, not very good street fighter athlete was doomed. I was not going to be able to do what I did before. So I'd better find something to get into. And so I started reading. I started reading Catcher in the Rye. I started reading Shakespeare. I started reading, some of the other great genius writers, Ernest Hemingway. And then when I got out of the hospital, my sister, Kathleen, took me to see Franco Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'd had all this pent up emotion inside of me for so long. I'm not a bad kid. I was going down. I'm not on this earth to harm other people. Fights, and it was just so wrong and not me. And when I watched the brilliance of that film and the actors in it, Leonard Whiting and Olivia Hussey, I wept, Rich. I wept for my life and the choices that I had made. And I immediately the next day, on crutches, went to the library in my high school and got a copy of Romeo and Juliet and memorized the entire balcony scene, both characters, and still know it to this day.
Wow. That is impressive.
And I used it to get into Juilliard, as a matter of fact. So Shakespeare got me out of that bad neighborhood. And I have a great reverence, and I teach Shakespeare. I have a great reverence for all the classics, actually. I mean, the Greeks, Shakespeare, Restoration comedy, Moliere. I mean, all of the great literature throughout the ages. I feel poetry, I'm a big poetry fan, big W.B. Yeats fan. These things actually can change one's consciousness. Mm-hmm. And so I immersed myself in that world, and I auditioned for a play in high school and I got the lead in it. And then I got fired. Then I auditioned for the next play and I got the lead in that and I didn't get fired.
Right.
And I walked, a good 1 for 2. And I walked on stage and said my first line, and the audience cracked up laughing. And I stood there on stage and I went, this is the first time anyone's ever listened to me in my whole life. I came from a big family, Irish Catholic, poor. You had to fight for a seat at the dinner table,
Yeah.
And here I was standing here talking, and 500 people were listening to every word I said. So I went, I think I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And having that laser beam focus at 17, I went to a community college for a year, did plays there, and actually they were quite good teachers as well. And they recommended that I audition for Juilliard. I thought, isn't that strange? That's a school for music. But in 1968, they had opened up a drama division under the auspices of John Houseman, the great partner of Orson Welles, and he started the Mercury Theater and produced many big films, Julius Caesar with Marlon Brando, and then went on to become something of a movie star himself at the end of his life with Paper Chase. Yeah. Here's the dime. Call your parents and tell them you're on the next train home. You know, he was a very sort of stodgy, London upper class. But we had to listen to him lecture, every Friday. We all had to go into the auditorium all 4 years. All 4 groups had to pile into the auditorium, and John Houseman would lecture us on the ethics of the theater and how important it was to be a smart actor as well as being a strong actor. That strength and intelligence combined would make you different than. It was kind of like the Marines for actors. And they were very tough back then. They're not so tough anymore, but back then they had a kind of sort of Damocles over your head. So with each play that you did, and you did 4 every year, you were always in rehearsal. You're taking classes all day and rehearsing all night, every night, 5 days a week. And because I was a scholarship student, I had to work on the weekends. So that's what I mean about a work ethic.
Yeah.
It's nothing for me to work 7 days. I think nothing of it. But they had this policy where if you weren't living up to their standards, they would ask you to leave the school. And especially a lot of pressure was put on the scholarship students. So I'll never forget the day that they kicked Kelsey Grammer out, because Kelsey was before me for some reason. I don't know why that was, but we each had our interview with John Houseman and the faculty. And I'd been there 2 years and Kelsey had been there 2 years. And, he came down the stairs and I'm like, Kelsey, what's up? And he goes, they kicked me out, Tommy. They said I don't have enough talent. And he walked away, and I thought, oh my God, I know I'm next. I'm next. Put me on the guillotine. So I went in and I just got a warning. I got to go another year, and then I quit. I thought I was good enough to go out and work, and rather arrogant of me, but true, I did quit. And I'd say within 4 months, I got my first professional acting job.
Yeah. You started from I didn't realize until I was doing my research how late you actually started. But at 21 years old, you were offered 2 movies simultaneously. One was Snowbound, and the other one was originally called Pity the Poor Soldier. I think it was renamed something else. So the question I have regarding that was that why did you choose the latter, even though Snowbound offered you twice the amount of money?
Oh, interesting you should say that. And you have to understand, I'm a kid. I was a kid with a poverty consciousness. Money in movies was just so abstract to me, And my agent, Jeff Hunter, God rest his soul, he was a great agent. He called me up and he said, get into the office. We have 2 offers for you and we have to make a decision. And the first one was Snowbound. I think it was directed by a very good director, and I can't remember his name, Robert Young. And he really wanted me to play the lead in this part. And at the same time, I was offered Pity the Poor Soldier, which was a Revolutionary War film, and a smaller part for half the pay. Now, since the advent of what I will call Disney-esque fascism that's taken over the corporatization of the movie business, prior to that, there was a real search to create art, to the films of the 70s, Coming Home. I mean, all the movies with Gene Wilder and Al Pacino and Dustin. This is what I wanted to do with my life, you see. And I said to my agent, I think that because it's my first movie, it's probably better if I take a smaller part, and the bigger parts will come. I had that. Yeah, I had that kind of faith in myself. I don't know.
Yeah. I love it because like you weren't in it just for the money. You cared about the craft. You took it seriously. You were disciplined. You weren't afraid to put in the work, and you're like, you know what, it's gonna come to me. And so I like the fact that you just didn't jump in, take the paycheck, and say, all right, I'm out of here.
Yeah, which he was shocked. He's like, but you're broke. I mean, you're living. I was sleeping on a friend of mine's floor, 3 guys in a 1-bedroom apartment, and I was on the floor. They each had beds. I mean, I really needed the money, but excuse me. The next movie, On the Yard, was where I got the lead, and that was a great experience.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about that next. Before I do that, there's another person that did that in another. I love the '70s movies. Those are probably my all-time favorite era. Like you mentioned, you just mentioned a couple of all the great movies. But another one, Sylvester Stallone. They said, "We don't want you. We want the script. We don't want you." And he goes, "I'm not telling you the script unless I'm in it." And he was so broke that he would actually feed his dog before he would eat himself. But he stuck to his guns, and look where he is now. So
yeah,
if you believe in yourself.
Yes. Good old Sly. I mean, they offered him a lot of money.
Yeah.
I forget the amount. I know it was quoted. I think it was $350,000, and that back then,
1976. Yeah.
that was
the money.
That'd be like $1 million today for a first time screenwriter.
Yeah. No, but he stuck to his guns, and I'm glad he believed in himself just like you. And so the next one was 1978, was On the Yard with John Hurd. And was it after that you were offered a 3-picture deal?
Yeah. I don't want to pass over John Hurd so quickly because he meant a great deal to me as a person and as an actor. A brilliant, incredible actor. He was playing Cassio in Othello in Central Park. Raul Julia was Othello. And it was a wonderful production directed by Wilfred Leach. And some famous, well, his kid's famous now, but some famous director was flown to the East Coast to look at Richard Dreyfuss for the lead in his next film called Cutter and Bone. And this guy whose name escapes me watched Othello and went running to the payphones on Central Park West and said, forget Richard Dreyfuss. I just saw the actor that I want for my film. His name is John Hurd, and please call him and make him an offer tomorrow. And the movie was Cutter's Way with Jeff Bridges.
Yeah.
And John was great in that. And he was a great, great actor on stage as well as film. And he taught me everything I know about film acting. Because I didn't know what. I was 22 years old, and it was like, here, you have the lead in this movie, go ahead. And I didn't really know what I was doing, and I didn't know how to use the camera. I didn't know how to work with the director. I didn't know. I was lost and in way over my head.
Yeah.
And John, like a big brother, he must have watched the first couple takes on my first day on the set and said, like, come with me, son. And we worked on the script all night, every night, and rewrote all of my scenes. I mean, this is to absolute zero benefit to himself. It was only to make me better in the film. And he improved my performance by 1,000%. I went on the set the next day, not only having rewritten the scenes with John, but I knew how to play them.
Yeah.
And I got quite good notices, as I recall. And that was how I got the offer to audition for the Warriors and the Wanderers. And I got offered both of them too. And then I got a 3-picture deal with Paramount Pictures. Yeah.
Wow. And
At
I don't know.
23.
Yeah, that's insane. Is so that's I mean, just shows how talented you are. That 23 years old, they're offering you a 3-picture deal, and then they want you for the lead. It's just but I mean, I want to talk about the Warriors. Well, first of all, I want to talk about the Wanderers. Why did you choose the Warriors over the Wanderers?
Because, Walter brought me to the old Gulf and Western building and said, I want to screen East of Eden, no, Rebel Without a Cause with you,
Mhm.
because that's how I see the character. And I was like, great. So I watched the movie with him, and he seemed a sensitive man to me. And I thought that we had connected as people. And even though Philip Kaufman, also a brilliant director, I thought I would choose the Warriors. And there was also the carrot at the end of the stick of the 3-picture deal, which wasn't true in the other case. And that's sort of where the trouble began. Is I thought Walter and I were making a movie about how the love story supersedes the violence that these people uh, exist with every day of their lives. And, I was wrong. That wasn't the movie he was making. He was making a sort of Western, futuristic Western about gangs
Yeah.
in New York City. And he is very smart and knew what he wanted. And I got fired from that job, much to my chagrin. And after the movie was completed, they sent it to me and said, we need to change the billing because you're obviously not, you're supposed to be Thomas Waits above the title in the Warriors. And I watched it, and I was such a spiteful and arrogant young person that I said, well, Peter O'Toole took his name off a movie he didn't like, so take my name off the credits. And that really pissed off Walter Hill, and it hurt him, and rightfully so. I was a pain in the neck. I kept going up to him and questioning him. You have to understand, directing a movie is, like I said, it's like a general leading a battle at war, and then there's this pain in the ass actor that's going, well, wait a minute, what about, and like, just get the fuck out of here. Tell him not to come back.
Yeah.
And so I got fired, and it was a very painful lesson. I wished he had given me a warning. I would have straightened up and, fly right, or whatever that expression is. But he saw to it that the best way was, for me to not come back.
It wasn't true. The studio wanted to keep you. It's Walter that wanted to get rid of you. So the studio wanted you.
Yeah, the studio must have wanted me because in his version of the final cut, I'm hardly in the movie at all.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, we like this kid Waits. And I think even the critics said that the movie kind of loses interest after my character dies.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really all my fault, Rich. It was, I just was someone who got too much success too soon and couldn't handle it, number one. I didn't have great relationships with authority figures to begin with. I was always a kid in trouble. And I was a disruptive influence on a set where a director was over budget, behind schedule. His most recent film, which was The Driver with Ryan O'Neal and Bruce Dern collapsed at the box office. So the pressure on this poor guy must have been, you know, uh, he must have been so freaked out trying to get this movie done, and he had to deal with thousands of extras, and I mean, I just wasn't mature or sensitive enough to realize that I was being such a pain in the balls, and so he fired me, and as painful as it was, I came to a crossroads early in my life that I really needed more discipline. So I became a black belt in karate.
Right.
I don't train anymore, but I was very serious about it for 10 years, and I went into therapy, and I certainly immersed myself in becoming a better musician.
Mhm.
So I tried to take, you know, I tried to be an alchemist and take the garbage and turn it into gold. I had created the garbage, mind you. This was no one's fault but my own. And yet I knew I had to dig my way out of it. And I did, because a couple months later, I auditioned for Injustice for All and got the role with Al Pacino. And then I went on to do several plays with Al and spend a lot of time with him and get to know him. Yeah.
Right. Well, we're going to get into that, but before we even get there, I just want to say I remember what I was like when I was 23 years old. I was very arrogant, and especially with you. You had all that success. You're at the same parties with John Belushi. You have a wild crowd you're hanging out with. I mean, so I can completely understand your perspective. And then as you get older, you realize, like, what was I thinking? I was just an asshole. So I mean, I completely understand
Yeah,
with that.
we've
But
all made mistakes.
exactly, exactly. Especially at that young an age, you're in the top of the world and things. But it did work out for the best for you. Before we get to that, though, I've found this out because I love Joe Walsh's "In the City." I think it's a perfect song for that movie. The end when they're walking down the beach, but that wasn't the original song they wanted. What was it?
The Promised Land by Bruce Springsteen. That was the song that they were going to use. And that almost made me change my mind about putting my name on the movie. When I heard, because I'm a huge Springsteen fan, I always have been. And I thought, oh, maybe this isn't going to be so bad after all if they're going to use Promised Land. But I don't know do you know what happened? Could they not get the rights, or?
That I'm not sure about. I didn't find out why they used Joe Walsh instead, but I just know that they went with him.
It was much better. I think it's a much better choice, Joe Walsh's song.
Yeah.
He's a great songwriter and singer in his own right, and a great guitar player. And I think the song works for the film much better than Promised Land did. But it was kind of cool to see it.
Yeah. And you actually jammed with Bruce Springsteen, didn't you? Or he taught you some guitars. Like, didn't you play with him at least one time?
Yeah, I wish I could say I played with him. I went to a concert when I was shooting John Carpenter's The Thing, and somehow I managed to get backstage. I can't remember how I finagled my way backstage, but there I was. And I don't know if you've ever been backstage at one of these big rock stars concerts, but there is a plethora of food and drink, and it's like a feast for a king and a queen, and everybody comes backstage and is eating and drinking. And I talked to Bruce's dad and his sister. I became friends with his sister briefly, Pam. And then finally you get sort of summoned into the king's chambers. So he's sitting there, with his girlfriend, Joyce Hauser, at the time. He would see people and they would stay for a few minutes and leave. And I was the last person that he saw that night, which I don't know what that meant, if I was important or not important, but everybody else had been in and gone, and there was like hardly anyone left. And they're like, okay, Tom, you can go back now. And I, like Pacino, I idolized Springsteen. I just thought, because we came from the same type of neighborhood, and I just thought he was the greatest stage performer I'd ever seen. And there was this, skinny, like young, shy man sitting there, and he had just performed for 4.5 hours. He could hardly speak. And the girl that was with me, Catelyn Adams, who was in the movie The Jerk with Steve Martin many years ago, she was my date. And she didn't even know who Springsteen was, really. It was like 1980 or something. And she's like, this guy loves you. He knows every one of your lyrics, because I'd be sitting there listening to you. And if I didn't understand a lyric, he'd be singing it in my ear. And I think that affected Bruce. I think that he was like, well, this guy must really be a fan, which I was. I still do. A great admiration for him. And so I asked him about a song that he plays, and it's called The Dream Song. And you've never heard it on any album because he's never recorded it. Hang on one second. It's really cool. It's really beautiful and really, really, it's an old Elvis Presley song written by a guy named Max Weinhardt. Mm-hmm. And it's very, when your heart is restless and you need to move along, when you're tired and weary and you can't go. Anyway, it goes like that.
I love it.
Has a chorus, yes. And he said, do you want to learn it? And I was like, yes. So I took out an envelope and a pen and I wrote down all the chord changes, and it actually gets pretty tricky in one part. There's an F sharp major in it, and an A major. That dream, wherever that dream may lead, you gotta follow that dream to find the love you need. And he taught it to me.
Wow.
And I still, to this day, as you can see, play it and love it. It was an old Elvis song that he did really fast. He got, follow that dream. And Bruce took it and slowed it down and turned it into a ballad.
Yeah.
Which really makes it interesting. Yeah. So that was my experience with Bruce Springsteen. And then I met him again in Vancouver when I went to see Bruce with Jackson Browne. Mm. I was doing a movie called Clan of the Cave Bear. Mm-hmm. And Jackson was dating Daryl Hannah. So he was around a lot, and he's another incredible hero of mine, a great songwriter, singer, musician. And, he said, hey, let's get tickets and go. And, he could have gotten the first class treatment and gotten the whole, VIP pack, whatever he wanted to do. But he just went like with me and sat in a regular seat, in the middle of 20,000 people or whatever. But then we both went backstage. And Bruce was like, Jackson, why didn't you tell me you were there? I would have brought you up, man. He's like, no, I just wanted to watch. And to be in the room with two giants, one of the highlights of my life, I can say. And so I spoke to Bruce again then. And that was the last time, unfortunately. I've tried to write to him a few times, but I don't think the letters get to him, or he must be too busy or whatever.
Yeah.
But, just to tell him, I still play that song that you taught me, after all these years, 40 years ago. I play it with my band. I play it at parties. People seem to like it. But the generosity of spirit is really my point.
Now, was music always as big a passion as acting is?
No. In fact, I was stone tone deaf when I was in Juilliard.
Wow.
I would never have gotten into Juilliard today. They would never have taken a tone deaf actor. But I realized very quickly that almost every play I got cast in, and I was working a lot, like going from play to play to play, they needed me to sing. So I was like, wow, I better learn, you know, how to sing and play music. And so I took it upon myself to discipline myself and train my ear. And that was an arduous task, to say the least. And no, listen, I was in a Broadway musical with Deborah Harry, so I can't be all that bad or tone deaf. Um, but no, I'm a songwriter, and I don't know um, what people think really of my music, but I guess I'll soon find out. They seem to like it. It's very raw, uh, like my acting is. It's very much from my soul.
Yeah. No, I can say the songs that I heard, I love. I went on Spotify, you had a couple songs on there, and I loved every song. And I told you I heard Ride on one of your interviews. So I'm very much looking forward to the Target soundtrack.
That music's in is way improved over what's on Spotify is okay,
Yeah.
but I didn't find my musical muse, Tony Daniels. He's my producer. He really taught me how to craft a song. I mean, I write them all, but he really, when you hear the music from the film, you'll hear the mastery. He's a master. And I was so lucky to have him, to have my editor, Jordan Santora, to have my three producers, Vinny Petrosini, Steve Conca, and Alyssa Rabinowitz. These people, they killed themselves for me, and my crew, and we worked late hours and grueling conditions at times. When you're working late at night continuously, it wears down the crew because they have to get up the next day and work all day. And so I tried to keep the night shoots to a minimum, and then plus paying overtime. It was very stressful doing a low budget film. You're always racing against the clock, and you never have enough money. And I had to feed everybody all the time. So the next one out, I'm hoping I get a little more room to breathe.
Yeah. Now, how did you raise some money for that? Let's get back to Target for a minute. Did you have a Kickstarter, or did you put?
I tried that. I tried to do a GoFundMe, and I think I raised like $2,000. I mean, almost nothing, like $2,000. And I'm like, well, how am I gonna? So I went to a few benefactors whom I know and knew as a young actor, and one of them actually, he has to remain nameless because he really doesn't want anybody to know that he does this. But he had financed a play that I directed, a Shakespeare play called Love's Labour's Lost, which is a very difficult play. And one of the reasons no one ever does it is because it's such a difficult play. But I decided to do it and set it in the 60s at Woodstock. And I thought it was pretty good, but the actors weren't ready the night that this particular benefactor came to see it. And he gave me $75,000 to do this play. I wanted all the actors to get paid, to make them feel like real actors. Most of them were my students. And I paid them for rehearsal, and I paid them for performances. And you don't get that kind of treatment customarily in off Broadway. And so I went back to him and I said, I have an idea. I want to make a film. And he said, Tom, why would I give you money after the last thing that I gave you money for was just I don't want to say it was terrible, but it was just not good. And I said, I agree with you. So I failed. The next time I'll fail better.
Fail upward.
And he bit. And so he gave me the seed money to get started. And then I went around to some fans and some people that I know that I grew up. One guy I grew up with that did very, very well for himself. And, and people, they all said to me basically the same thing. We don't even know what this, we're not going to read the script. We believe in you.
Mm-hmm.
We don't invest in things, we invest in people. And so when I was over budget and owed a lot of money to get this thing finished, I had to go back to them. It's very complicated,
Yeah.
Camera equipment is being rented and the credit card is maxed out. I'm like, ah! I didn't know how I was going to do it. It's only through the grace of God. And I assume my parents, who are still up there looking out for me down here, but I finished it and it's out there and it's good. And it's good because I'll tell you why it's good. Because my ex-wife, Lisa Greenberg, who knows me better than anyone in the world, has seen the film now 7 times. She saw all 3 screenings in New York, LA, and then New York. And then when it was available on the 18th, she watched it 2 times in a row in the apartment. And she's like, this is really good. This isn't just like, it's really good. You've made a really good movie. And for her to like it, and for my investors, by the way, each and every one of them that have seen it, and they're the first people that would be like, hey, that's my money. This is what you did with me. They love it. They especially love the music.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that asked for the music to be released separately on a separate deal. So, yeah, that was the journey. And now I have a horror film that I wrote for Kelsey Grammer. Yeah, we've remained friends all these years, but I came up with this idea of a main character, a villain, a sort of like Hannibal Lecter-ish character, but he only speaks in verse. So through the whole movie, like, he's killing people. Fear no more the heat of the sun, nor the furious winter's rages. Thou thy worldly task hast done. And they're all like, "Hey man, why do you talk like that?" And so it's sort of a poetical comic horror film called Devil's Night that I am trying to get off the ground at the moment.
All right. And do you have any, I mean, are you just in the beginning stages of that? Have it written yet?
The script is finished.
Okay.
I have written 4 scripts since Target. I was so motivated by what I saw that I wrote a sequel to Target Practice. I wrote a movie about boxing called The Boxer, and then another movie about boxing, only female boxers, and Devil's Night. And all 4 of them are like ready to, they're all ready. They've been rewritten and sent to the script doctor, washed, cleaned out, rewritten again, combed through, rewritten again, and ready to go. I really enjoy writing and directing my own films, and this is what I would like to do with the rest of my life, along with play music.
All right. Well, you're definitely on the right path. I cannot wait to see that. That sounds hilarious. And I love Kelsey Grammer. I've always liked him since the Cheers days. And I'm so glad. It's funny. I was just talking to somebody the other day about that. I said, obviously Ted Danson did very well after Cheers, but the 2 people that really made it after Cheers were Woody Harrelson and Kelsey Grammer. They took off, and I love that. And especially after hearing the stories you told me about him and Juilliard.
Funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
They said I don't have enough talent. I'll tell you an interesting thing about Kelsey. I've known a lot of successful people in my life, many times success can change people, and they start to believe their own press or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Kelsey is the same guy that he was when we were 17 years old in 1973. He's the same. Okay, he has a lot more money now, and
Yeah.
everyone stops him for pictures, and he's a big famous TV and movie star, and he's quite good.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, he sings. He's got a beautiful singing voice. He's a very talented guy. But this guy says, please, thank you to every waiter, every waitress. He opens doors for people. He's the same kid that I went to school with. And I don't think that's the case with a lot of people that become mega successful. You know, it goes into your ego. Your ego is your enemy, you know.
Yeah.
Isn't that what Anthony Hopkins said? I saw him on internet the other day, and he's like, ego. You have to have a little bit of ego to keep you going.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true. I mean, think about it. You're asking people to stop what they're doing and look at you and listen to you
Yeah.
for however long, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 hours, however long it is. It's a long time. You're saying, hey, look, forget your life. This is the life I want you to be involved with. It's me, mine, whether as an actor or a director or musician. And there is a certain degree of narcissism, I think, involved in that. Healthy narcissism, right? Love yourself, but really, ego is the enemy. And I've seen a lot of guys change, just completely change because of success. It's like a drug,
Yeah,
you know.
unfortunately. You can have the confidence without the arrogance.
I do now.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying you. I'm just saying people, when you're talking about you have to have a little bit of ego and narcissism. I'm saying in general, you could have confidence without arrogance and say, you know what, I'm good. I know I'm good. I want people to watch me without becoming some of the other megastars that you're talking about. That's what I meant by that.
That's right. I think
Yeah.
that's exactly right. You know, a great example of that in current day pop culture is the quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, I'm a big Eagles fan because I grew up in Philly. And, you know, after the Super Bowl, which was a terrible loss, he said, you either lose or you learn.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, and I look to him because he's such a good leader. He never gets ruffled. You know, even when things aren't going his way during the game, he stays calm. He never blames anybody. And that's the kind of director I'd like to be. As I tried to be, and think I succeeded, creating a set where, like John Carpenter does, everyone's having fun. You know, of course it's work. Of course we're making a movie, but you know, let's have fun. You know, and I learned that from John, and I learned that from the great Norman Jewison. Norman is a great director. He's an actor's director. You know, I loved working with him.
You know, it's funny.
Uh,
I interviewed Ted Neely, who Norman directed in Jesus Christ Superstar, and he was saying the same thing about Norman. And I didn't get a chance to talk to him, but I did meet him at a screening. They had similar to when I met you in Coney Island for the Warriors. I was able to watch Jesus Christ Superstar with the cast, and Norman was there. But I loved that, the Cincinnati Kid. But I want to talk about Injustice for All because we
sure.
mentioned that after the Warriors, and the next up was Injustice for All. So tell me how a trip to the dentist for Al Pacino pushed back your audition.
I can't believe these stories actually get out there. So, you know, now this is like probably early September, and I've been fired, I guess, about 4 weeks now, about a month, and still really, I was rattled. I was thrown. I mean, I was scared. I was a scared kid. I thought I'd fucked this up. You know, I was on my way, but my agent called me and said, Norman Jewison called and said, you know, are you an okay guy? I mean, are you a good guy? Was the Warriors thing an anomaly, or is that? And my agent assured him no, that I was a good guy and a good actor. and easy to work with, which ever since the Warriors, I've been a dream for every director I've ever worked with, believe me. Would you go in and audition for this film on Justice for All? And I said, well, I get to audition with Al. And he said, yeah. So I'm like, fuck, oh my God. I saw The Godfather. I became Al Pacino for about a week. I was talking like him. I mean, he's just such an amazing actor, especially in The Godfather. I mean, he redefined the whole genre of what a young leading man could be in the movies.
Yeah.
And so I get to Martin Bregman's office, and Martin was Al's manager at the time, and they were involved in producing And Justice for All. And I see Al come out to the secretary, and he says to her, we're going to go home. We're going to dentist appointment. I'll be back. And I don't know where I got the balls to do this. I go, excuse me, I was supposed to audition with you at 2:15 today. And if you leave, I mean, what's the deal? And he must have been so like, who the fuck is this guy? But he was very contrite, and he's like, I'm so sorry. Could you come back tomorrow? I said, yeah, okay, I'll come back tomorrow. So I came back the next day, and I was like, wow, I don't know where I get the gut. I'm not a risk-taking person. I don't gamble. I don't. But when it comes to my work, I'll do anything.
I love it.
I'll do anything to get my work done. And sure enough, I went in the next day. I auditioned with Al. We set the room on fire. And he said something to me I'll never forget. And I wrote it down in my diary at the time. He said, you know, kid, you got a beautiful talent. And I went, wow, I am at the mountaintop, you know.
No, so say the two people that you admire the most in the industry, Bruce Springsteen for music and Al Pacino in acting, and wow, you got a chance to, not only have play a song with Bruce backstage, but also you became really good friends with Al Pacino and did some plays together. Richard III.
And American Buffalo is a 3-character play, and
yes,
Al and I shared the same dressing room for a year.
I love that. I recently saw that in New York with Lawrence Fishburne, Sam Rockwell, and Darren Criss. Darren Criss played your character. I love pretty much everything David Mamet does. I love everything I've seen and read from him. But American Buffalo was, as I was watching it off Broadway, I could picture you two playing it. I could definitely see Al Pacino doing the Sam Rockwell character. I can't remember his name in the play, but
Peach.
Yes.
And the interesting thing about that story is that I was doing Richard III with Al on Broadway, and we were trying it out in Philadelphia, and it was just terrible. It was like 5 hours long. People were walking out. It was just terrible. And I'm from Philly. I'm a Philly guy. So all the newspapers came to review us on opening night. And I think it was the Inquirer, but one of the newspapers started with, except for Thomas Waits, no one in this production knows how to speak verse. So I promptly got fired.
Again.
And I'm like, David, why are you firing me? I mean, I'm getting ovations in the middle of the play. Like, you're too young.
Oh.
I see. Okay. They didn't want me to get anyway.
Yeah.
So
that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it was bad. But this is a classic story to tell your grandchildren. So my last night of the play, so they fired me. And I turned down 8 weeks of work on Heaven's Gate, which turned into 8 months of work. Thank you very much. because they went so far over budget and behind schedule. They stayed out there in Montana or wherever the fuck it was. And Mickey Rourke got my part. And I turned down all that money because I wanted people to see that I could do Shakespeare on Broadway. And here I was getting fired. So my last performance, and then they didn't have anyone to replace me. So they're like, "You're fired, but can you still do the part?" And I'm like, "What the fuck?" So I go, "Okay, I'm an actor. I act, right?" So I did the play for 2 more weeks.
Wow.
Even after I knew I was fired. And my very last night, I was so upset. I did something I don't recommend anybody do, but I did it. I smoked a joint right before I walked out on stage. Richmond comes on at the end of the play, and he kills Richard III, and he becomes Henry VII, I believe it is, Queen Elizabeth's grandfather. And he's a great hero in Shakespeare's storyline. And Richmond is this young warrior. And so on the stage right side, Al Pacino had his camp of soldiers. And on the stage left side, I had my camp of soldiers. And the lights would switch back and forth to our respective camps. And we would have these scenes. And then we went into battle and I killed him. So the lights come up on my camp. And I'm so stoned out of my mind. I don't know what. I start doing knuckle push-ups. And the audience, who's bored to death by this point in the play, are laughing their ass off. They're like, what
that's hilarious.
And Al's over there going, what the hell? What are they laughing at? They're not supposed to be laughing here. So I have this big sword fight with him. I kill him, and he dies with his eyes facing the audience wide open. And I had this big, beautiful velour cape, and I took the cape off and I threw it over his head.
That is hilarious.
And the next day, the cape was gone from my dressing room.
And that was your final performance?
And the next day, I had to come back to get my stuff. And Al's bodyguards come up to me and they go, "Mr. P wants to see you in his dressing room." I'm like, what? This is like going to see Michael Corleone, right? It's like, I'm sorry, Alfredo,
Oh, man.
You're going to have to sleep with the fishes. So I go into Al's dressing room and he's like, "Kid, what's the matter with you? You've got all this stuff going for. What are you doing out there?" And I said, I turned down all this work to stay in this play, to be with you, and I got fired, and it's not fair, and I'm really upset about it. And he understood. So I don't know why, I happened to have a copy of American Buffalo in my back pocket. When I was a young actor, I always had a play on me. I was always reading a play. So I put American Buffalo down on his dressing table. And I said, "If you're going to do a play, Al, this is the play you should do." Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, I'll never see this guy again. And then 6 months later, my agent called me and said, "Al wants you to come over to his apartment and read American Buffalo."
Wow.
And we read it, and then we did it, and it was a huge success. I mean, we had lines around the block all the way out to 6th Avenue every night. People trying to get tickets to get in to see that. And Al was brilliant. I mean, I'm sure Sam Rockwell, who's a very good actor, was good too.
Yeah.
But Al's a street guy. Mm-hmm. When he threatens, it's not an actor threatening somebody. He scares the living daylights out of people. When he walked around, with that pig iron.
Yeah.
When he walked around with that chunk of steel, you held your breath. And And he taught me a great deal. Being on stage with him every night was really exciting and wonderful. And that's what got me the job with John Carpenter. Is John and Kurt came to see American Buffalo and then asked me to come in and audition for a character named Santiago, which obviously the name had to change. So they cast me, and his name was John Simmons or some, I can't remember what, but it was a very bland, nondescript name. And, I saw the green glasses and I brought them into rehearsal and I turned John Simmons into Windows.
So yeah, John Carpenter, or did you approach John Carpenter and said, I want to change the name?
I did. In rehearsal. I was wearing my green glasses. I was in the middle of rehearsal and I said, John, I want everybody to call me Windows from now on. And he took a drag of his cigarette and went, all right, everybody, from now on, Tommy wants us to call him Windows. All right, let's go to the next scene, please.
I love it. I can picture that so clearly. Just seeing different interviews with John. He seems so mellow. Just like, hey, how's it going? You know what's funny? Because you brought up a great point, too. I heard that story before, and you said it was the first time where it was Mac and Windows.
You're right. You have Mac and Windows in 1980 before there were even computers. And you have Mac and Windows. I mean, the whole thing covered right there.
I love it. Well, I want to go back to Injustice for All for a minute because there's that final scene that you had. Everybody knows about that infamous final scene. So when the scene wasn't working, you said that you were confused. What was the advice that Al Pacino gave you?
It's really interesting because I don't generally get nervous. I'm a craftsman and I know my craft and I know my level of skill and I know how to work and I pace myself. But there I was with Al Pacino on this big budget movie, this big Columbia Studio Pictures presents film, and with the idol of my childhood. And I choked. I couldn't, what I had done in the audition, I couldn't recreate. And we kept doing the scene and it was getting worse. And then I was starting to freeze up and it was getting really bad. And when an actor gets tense, it's really bad. And Norman Jewison, to his credit, he cleared everybody out of the room. He's like, okay, everybody out. All I want is Tommy and Al. Everybody else has to go. So everyone split. And we were sitting there in the bed. And Norman's like, what's wrong? He said, I don't know. I'm confused. And Al looked at me and said, confusion is a very good state of mind for an actor to be in.
I love that.
And somehow I just relaxed. And Norman said, now, you guys, just read through the scene as if you've never heard it before. Read through it without any preconceived notion of how you're going to do the lines. Mm-hmm. So Al and I just sat there and we read very calmly, no emotion, just the words. And then I relaxed. Then he called the crew back in and I got the nickname One Take Tommy. It was like master shot, boom, medium shot, boom, close up, boom, next close up, boom, boom, boom. Wow. I mean, a scene that would have taken 4 hours to do, I did it in 2 hours, I think. And it was because Norman is an actor's director, he pays careful attention to the actor's process, and a wonderful man too. I really wish him the best wherever he is. I think he's still alive, no?
Yeah. The last time that Jesus Christ Superstar was 5 years ago, so I'm not sure if he's alive now, but I hope he is. I haven't heard anything from him lately, but yeah, like I said, Ted Neely, who played Jesus, was going on and on saying exactly what you were saying, what a great guy he is and how he was great with the actors and how he understood them. And so with how he was with you, did he let you improv at all, or did he say stick exactly to the script?
No, he let us improv. In fact, there's a whole scene in that film that was cut out that Al said if they had kept it in, I would have been nominated for an Academy Award. And it was this scene where he comes to visit me in the hospital. And it was so heartbreaking. He grabs onto my hand, and there are tears streaming down my face, and I'm all beat up, and this is before I take the hostages. And it was beautiful. I mean, I've been such a lucky man. Lucky man. Lucky man is the theme song to Target that you're about to see. I'm a lucky man. Yeah. But to have all those experiences throughout the years, and then to do tons of television, Law and Orders, NYPD Blue, working with some great actors, all along the way, and honing my craft and watching different directors. And then, I guess I just finally made an agreement with myself that I knew I could do this just as well, if not better than many of the people that I was working with. So
yeah,
I took a gamble on myself, and listen, I got the movie made and it's been released. That's an accomplishment in and of itself. Just try getting a distribution deal with all the content that's out there now. It's very difficult.
Yeah. And again, I love the fact that you stuck to your guns, you believe in the script, and you said, went full force, threw the sucker punch in there, didn't worry about like, oh my God, should I take this out? So was it better for you that you raised the money yourself because you didn't have to go through a studio that said, no, I know like one studio didn't pick it up because you didn't have any nudity in it. So it's probably better that you were able to raise the money and do it yourself because you had free reign on that.
Yeah, I like having artistic control. I
Yeah.
don't like being told what to do. I don't mind suggestions. I'll take them from anyone, especially my actors, because a good director knows how to listen to his actors. And they made terrific suggestions, especially Jam Murphy. She was, if there are any directors out there looking for a great, beautiful blonde actress, 30 years old, cast her, because you'll really be glad you did. She made the set fun. If anybody had a right to be a diva, right? This gorgeous blonde and a couple scenes in a push-up bra and high heels, and if anybody had a reason to be uptight, it could have been her. And yet she was like, let's make a movie, boys. And she was just so much fun.
Yeah.
Because now with the Me Too movement and and all that stuff, I really do empathize with women and the oppression of women and what they've been through. Because I've seen a lot of that, throughout my years. Directors and producers using their power to manipulate women into doing things where it robs them of their own agency and dignity. And so I certainly love and respect all women. And my film, I hope, depicts an honest woman in a crisis in her marriage, just doing the best she can. And I think I succeeded. I mean, even though the film itself is from Nick's point of view, he's the central character. She's, the force of action in it. She takes the dramatic action in the story, and it's a trip trying to write women when you're a man. Because again, I don't pull any punches. I mean, I have dialogue about women's periods and their cycle and the moods that they get in and their hormones. I just go right for it, because I figure if you're gonna do it, go for it, man. Just go for it. If it makes you uncomfortable, it's probably good.
Exactly. No, It reminds me of years ago, South Park did an episode where they were doing a Christmas pageant, and they said, well, we have to take out this because it's going to offend the Jewish people. We have to take out this because it's going to offend the Christians. Finally, they took out everything that offended everybody, and people are watching and go, this is boring. Let's go home. There's nothing left.
Exactly.
Yeah,
If you don't offend someone, you must be doing something wrong. You don't
exactly.
piss somebody off,
Yeah.
Uh,
Like I said, I think for me, I have a great sense of humor where I think anything could be made fun of. It's just there's a way of doing it. You don't have to be mean about it, but there's a way you
That's
can
right.
do things. And just knowing what you're saying about this and what I read about the movie, I'm very much looking forward to it. 'Cause it has pretty much everything that I would like in a movie. It's got a great sense of humor, and so I will definitely be spreading the word once this interview comes out about have everybody watch this movie.
Please do,
I definitely
because
will.
I need the support. I don't have a big studio behind me. I have a small little distribution company, Dead Talk Live Media, and they're working like crazy to promote the film, but I don't have, Netflix behind me or Hulu or
Yeah.
some big, massive corporate entity that is backing me. It's just a guy in New York that made a movie, and it's going to have to be a grassroots thing where people say, "Hey, you got to see this because it's just too much fun," and when it's taken as fun, it really works.
And I wish I heard about this earlier, but didn't Chris Noth from Sex and the City and Law and Order, didn't he have a screening at his club?
He did, as a matter of fact. Chris
Yeah.
is a buddy of mine, and he had a screening at his place, and he laughed like crazy. Oh my God, we had so many laughs. He goes, "You realize this is going to piss a lot of people off, right?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "This is very anti-woke." I said, "I know. I'm gonna get crucified." But hopefully people see the humanity,
Yeah.
and hopefully these changes, whether it's the Me Too movement or, thank God, finally, inclusivity with, people of different cultures getting an opportunity to play leads and have stories be about them, that we expand rather than contract, that we, increase our, breadth and width of artistic understanding to let there be room for everyone. There's room for everyone in this world, and as long as you harm no one,
Exactly.
as long as no one is harmed, that's the key. And kindness is king. Kindness is the new cool.
Hmm.
I saw Bono the other day, and he was doing a tiny desk NPR thing, and he said that I find myself, as I'm getting older, only wanting to hang around with my friends that I'm comfortable with, and the ones that I don't want to have conversations with, I avoid. And I don't think that's a good idea, because if I had had this conversation with Michael Hutchinson, the lead singer of In Excess, he might still be here today.
Hmm.
And he did a song that was quite beautiful, and I know what he means, that the hard choices, the tough choices, most people cop out on them, and in theater, in film, in television, even radio for that matter, uh, this is our arena to speak the truth,
Hmm.
to reflect where society is at, and to do whatever we can to improve the quality of life for people by entertaining them. And, really what we do is divertissement, as the French would say. We distract people. We give them a chance to escape from their reality for a few hours so that they can get lost in the story. And
Yeah.
then when they return to their own problems, perhaps they have a new and healthier perspective as a result.
Yeah. Well, see, I agree with you 1,000%. I respect all the movements, But I think the people that get offended the most are people that would never go see your movie, people that have too much time on their hands. It's probably maybe 3 or 4 people that are home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They're out of work and they're bored and they're like a keyboard warrior. They would never say anything to your face. And they're the people who are not going to buy a ticket to see this movie or go see that comedian or whatever it is, but they're complaining about it. And if you don't like it, you don't have to watch it. There's an on button and there's an off button.
Right, right.
So that's why I think that, like you said, it kills me that this woke movement is out there. With it really doesn't have to be, because if you don't like it, nobody's putting a gun to your head and said you have to watch this, you have to listen to this. So if you like it, good, go ahead and enjoy it. So I think that everybody should have, like you said, without hurting anybody, be able to do it and entertain the people. Because there's a lot of people out there that like what you're doing, and let them enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, imagine being in North Korea. You can't even read Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
You can't even read a book unless it's about the family of King, whatever the fuck his
Kim
name is.
Jong-un.
I mean, you can't even read a book. Can you
I know.
imagine that kind of oppression?
Yeah.
What the mind what it must shrink to become. You know, literature saved my life, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as I said at the outset of this interview, high quality literature. Just get a book of poems by Yeats or Keats or Byron or Browning or Walt Whitman, a great American
Mm-hmm.
poet, genius. Emily Dickinson. Read a poem and it'll do the same thing for you that a drink might do. Rather than drinking alcohol and killing yourself, read a poem out loud. It'll really change your consciousness and alter the way you perceive things. We are all of us in this together, whether, we make our living in the entertainment business, or, you're a cop or insurance salesman, whatever you do, as long as you do it well and do it with respectability and honor, a garbage collector. I mean, my parents used to say to me when I was a kid, we don't care what you become. You can become a garbage collector as long as you're good at it, as long as you do well. And I had that kind of freedom too, despite all the restrictions of being pecuniary circumstances. I had the freedom to explore what I wanted to be. And my parents were very supportive. And when I started working as an actor, they came to see everything that I was in. They'd fly all over the country. They had no money. They'd fly all over the country to come and see their boy,
Wow, that's good. Now I have a question for you. I'm going to ask you first as a director, then as an actor, because I interviewed somebody that worked with Clint Eastwood in several movies, and he was saying that Clint Eastwood he always wants to keep it genuine. He doesn't want the scene rehearsed, so it's basically one take, let's go. And then you have people like Stanley Kubrick, who would do a minimum of sometimes of 150 takes on The Shining and other movies like Full Metal Jacket. So as a director, what's your style?
Okay, I understand what Clint Eastwood is saying. And, he's certainly been around long enough to know what he's talking about. However, despite the fact that it's not as fresh on the 5th or 6th take, your job is to make it look fresh.
Mm-hmm.
And rehearsal really only improves the idiosyncrasy and the detail involved in the scene's schematics and dramatic narrative. So I'm all for rehearsing. I don't want to stand there and do take after take after take for no reason, because it's just a waste of time. But I will shoot it until my actor is comfortable, till I know he's got it or she's got it. I'll give them that. If they say, can I have another one? I'm like, absolutely. But if I get it, what I want in the first or second or third take, print, let's move on. I mean, I don't need to sit there and waste time, especially in this instance where I was the producer. I couldn't afford to. But I also, and I think you'll see, my actors are so relaxed.
Yeah.
They are having so much fun. You can't have fun unless you're relaxed, right?
Yeah.
And for that, I give myself a bit of a pat on the back. But I'm in between Stanley Kubrick, who I think was a great director. You know, I think that The Shining was great, and 2001 is fantastic, and you know, even the very first one with Kirk Douglas, that great military movie. I can't remember the name of it, but
Is that the one with Peter Sellers that had a
yeah.
how I dropped the bomb or something? It was they had a
Oh,
Doctor
right, right.
Strangelove. Doctor Strangelove.
Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah, that was a
As
great movie, and also Lolita and Clockwork Orange. He pretty much every
Lolita
movie
was
he's done. Yeah,
he was a master. You know, he may have gotten a little carried away. You know, as he got older, I don't know. I know people that have worked with him, and they
yeah.
did say. And I actually did a commercial years ago for some law firm, and this guy, you know, I needed to look. I had kids. I had to make health insurance. I had to pay the bills. You know, I did whatever I had to do to survive as an actor, and I booked this commercial. It was for a law firm, and I don't want to say the guy's name. I don't mean this disparagingly, but I had to say I had to do this same take. I'm telling you, 65 times. One line. The crew was standing there like going, "Get us out of here," for no reason. He just kept saying, "I just want you to do it again. I just want you to do it again. Just do it again. Please do it again. Do it again." And it was the same. I had to have the same. I had to be like really afraid. I'm like, Mark, so I mean, it was like really terrible. I mean, just I was such a ham, but I did it, you know, because that's my job, and I have no business telling the director how many takes he should or shouldn't have in a scene. That's not my affair. Nor do actors have any business telling the director when to cut the camera.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can really piss people off by calling cut. That's not your job.
Mm-hmm.
Your job is to act the scene. And one of the things I learned from Pacino was never stop just because they say cut.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's still in there in Injustice for All. They yelled cut, and Al pulls out a package of lifesavers. And he goes, "Here, kid, you want a lifesaver?" And I go, "Sure." And I think it's still in there. And I take one and I put it in my mouth. And then the scene ends. And it's just a beautiful, organic, spontaneous moment.
Yeah.
But you do have to stick to the script. You know, I'm an actor studio member, so I mean, I understand improv and I can do improv, and I think it's very useful if it leads to ultimately doing the scene.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just doing improvisation because you don't want to learn the lines, it's never going to help you.
Yeah.
You have to improvise according to the circumstances of the scene and then apply it to the dialogue that the writer's given you. And when you do TV, let me tell you, it's 46 minutes. That's all. Every scene is timed with a stopwatch.
Yeah.
Because they've got to get those commercials in there, man. And you learn how to work. The method is not useful for television. You simply don't have time. Yeah. On stage, it can be useful, and in film, it can be useful. But generally speaking, I'm a classically trained actor as opposed to a method actor. I'm more of a natural born method actor. I never studied the method. I just went around the studio and heard people talk about it and read the books, but I do all that naturally. It just comes to me, you know, the character comes from within me.
So when the camera stops rolling, you become Thomas G. Waits again. You don't stay in character the entire time, like Daniel Day-Lewis, who insists that people will call him. You have to call him Abraham Lincoln throughout the whole filming of the movie.
Yeah, I find that excessive. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I understand it, and I respect his great talent, and he's done a great job. But you know, I worked with the great Geraldine Page, one of the greatest actresses to ever live. And Geraldine would be like fooling around off stage, you know, making jokes, and you know, and then it's her cue to come on stage, and she'd be like, okay, and she'd go on stage and she'd be great.
Yeah.
You
What
know,
was that?
you don't have
Paradise Lost, I think.
Paradise Lost. That's exactly right. Well, you really did do your research. You
I
know
did.
more about me than I do.
If you have any questions, just ask me.
Yeah, really. I'm going to call you up and ask you for advice on my next move. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, Rich. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh yeah, I'm loving this. Do you have to go now?
Yeah, I'm about wrapped up.
Okay, so what I want to ask is, well, I really do appreciate you being on the show, but I have so much more I'd love to do when you have some time, and I know you're a really busy man. I'd love to do a part 2 because we didn't even get to more than half of it. I would love to continue some other time.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. And, you know, especially after you've seen the movie, then we'll have a lot more to talk about.
Most definitely. So what I'll do is I'll do my outro now. I'll send you the email, and then we can get the the links that you want up and the pictures you want, and then we'll set up another date in a couple of weeks, and we'll have part 2. Talk about your music career, talk about some of the other movies you've done, talk about your stage work, talk about moving to Iowa to become a playwright. We have a lot of things to talk about.
Yep, I've been around.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, Thomas, it's been great talking to you, and I will talk to you again. And let all my listeners know, Amazon Prime, check out Target. It's going to be a great movie.
Thank you so much, Rich.
You're very welcome. That wraps up the latest episode of The Claws Corner. A huge thanks goes out to actor, director, playwright, and acting teacher Thomas G. Waits for taking time out of his extremely busy schedule to be a guest on my show. He will be back. Another huge thanks goes out to editor extraordinaire John Bristol of Elmwood Productions for always doing a superb job editing the show each and every week and making it available to all. I am also extremely grateful to Joseph Timothy Quirk and Rob Bull for all of their hard work and dedication and all they do to make my show available not only on several Connecticut radio stations, but Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, Audible, and iHeartRadio. Thank you both very much. And lastly, but definitely not least, I need to thank you, the viewer, for always tuning in. Enjoy your day, everyone.